Now, this parable that we heard from the Gospel of Luke in that Gospel passage today, it's one of those parables and passages from the Gospels where you look at it and go, wow, there's a lot there, and I'm not quite sure exactly what's going on. Because Jesus is using this example of a steward, a bad steward, a willy steward, untrustworthy steward. There's all sorts of titles that are given to the parable. And really, it's kind of looking at it going, okay, what exactly is this supposed to teach us? Well, it's a series of parables, and we've been going through these parables from the Gospel of Luke over the past few weekends, looking at what is going on. And Jesus is teaching us about how to use those things which we have, in particular wealth, those things that we've been blessed with. So we're going through, and Jesus looks at this steward, and he's saying, okay, first of all, we have a steward. So the word in Greek really literally means house manager. Literally, the Greek word for house is in there, the first part of the word. And then we have the squandering of property. The Greek word there kind of really means, if you break it apart, thoroughly scattering, and figuratively means squandering, wasting. We have a steward who really is not paying attention and doing what he should be doing. He's not trustworthy with what has been entrusted to him. And yet, we also look at him and we see, okay, well, at least he's shrewd and prudent in some ways, because he recognizes the situation that he's gotten himself into, and he's seeking a way out of it. So he's not stupid, he's not dumb, but he's someone who really shouldn't be trusted. Now, Jesus is using this because as he gets into it, he takes it and says, okay, what is going on here? Yes, this steward was not very good with what was given to him. He's not very good with being able to be trusted. And yet, at the same time, he's figuring out a way to make sure that he can still live and go about these things. And Jesus says right after this, he's calling out, look at this dishonest steward who is yet prudent in doing things for himself to make sure that he can live. Now I want you to look around at the world around us, the generation, and see, yes, there are many people who are like this. They are building up their own little personal kingdoms. They're very good at it. But when it comes to being trustworthy with the things of heaven, the realities of spiritual life, they really are not good at that. And he goes on then and says, so if you're make friends for yourself with dishonest wealth. That dishonest wealth really means worldly wealth, the things of material. And when that fails for you, like it failed for the steward, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings because at least you're prudent in spiritual things. Now, many years ago, went on 2 mission trips over 2 years to Mexico. The second one I co-led with a younger college student, and we went to the Yucatan Peninsula, so Merida. Cancun is in the north. But as you go further south, Cancun is very built up, very beautiful. I've never been there myself. I saw it from a distance. And then you're in the city of Merida, which is the capital of that area. It's a beautiful old city, many colors. But as you go further south, the city gets worse and worse and worse. And you get in the neighborhoods where it's crumbling. And then as you go further south and come out of the city, literally you're in the outback, you're in a jungle. And you're driving along these highways and you're not seeing much. And we spent half the week in a town called Yaxcaba. In Mayan it means green place. Now, Yaxkaba and the parish of Yaxkaba, a beautiful, wonderful place. The church, St. Peter the Apostle Church, old church, built in the 1500s. So we're talking about a church that, when I got there, I said, oh my goodness, this church has been standing longer than my country has existed. That's kind of interesting. And I slept in the rectory there in a hammock. I was saying there were Franciscan monks who were missionaries who were swinging in a hammock here hundreds of years ago. That's quite interesting. And yet, what really struck me about that trip and that area is that most of the people who lived there lived in houses which thatched roofs that were no larger than this area between the stairs and the end of the sanctuary here. They were living with so little, and yet they were so filled with joy, and the faith that they had and shared with me was enormous. The faith that they were able to live out. They didn't have much, and yet the largest building in that town, and it was right in the center, right next to the village green, was the church. And when they all gathered and came together, they loved being in that church and celebrating and spending time together in faith. Now, the other interesting part about that parish was that the priest who was there, one priest, Padre Felix was his name, he had 18 villages in his parish with 17 different church buildings, 2 of which had roofs. And he said, for $2,000, we could put a roof back on one of the church buildings. But a hurricane will come through like it did the last time and tear it off. And then we'll be right back where we're at. And I remember going to one of the villages and seeing some of what they were doing and working, and they said, yeah, we make the hammocks that people sleep in. I said, the cost is $30, and that'll feed a family here in this village for a month. I handed over $30 and then handed over another $30. I said, I don't need that. What is that to me? I can go out and buy a lunch in the United States. That's the cost of living here. But the reality was that wealth that we have been gifted with to other people can do amazing things in their lives. Getting out sometimes and experiencing the way that other people live, the way that other people are able to live on so little, it can change our own perspective of what we have received. Now, the other side of that, too, is if we really sit back and think about it and follow back, yes, we work hard, we go about good things, but we ask the Lord to help us, to give us the things that we need to live, to care for ourselves, that we don't get sick, all these different things. If we follow it back, though, and we really think about who owns everything, who has given us all that we have, the root of that is God. And if then we really think about it, okay, it's God's creation. Everything that I have, everything that I own is a gift from God. Then it should really be at the disposal of God and what He would have us do. If we sit back and think about that, everything that is in my house, my very property, my very car, it really all in some way belongs to God. And am I truly, truly grateful for all that I have? Do I take the time to thank God for the blessings which He has given to me? To be thankful, to experience gratitude. Oftentimes when people come to me and say, Father, I'm really struggling. I just don't know. I've got all this stuff and stuff. Have you sat back and thanked God for the blessings that He's given you in your life lately? Do you do it on a daily basis? Do you really sit back and think about how blessed we each truly are? And if we reorient our perspective and come at it saying, wow, the Lord has given me so much, then it's a little bit easier to realize that when it's time to help someone else out who's less fortunate, we can easily hand over what needs to be given. If it's God's, then it's already His to do with what He would desire. We are not entitled truly to much. We may feel that we are, but we have to remember that God is the one who provides the blessings for us, that God brings about fruit from the work of our hands. If we make sure that we stand in the proper perspective, then we truly can be ones who use the wealth and the blessings that we have in a trustworthy way, trustworthy before God and God alone, that we can share with those who need help. The end of our gospel today is that familiar line, you cannot serve both God and mammon. Mammon is a Greek translation of an Aramaic term that really just means riches, money, wealth. We cannot serve both God and a gospel of wealth. The prosperity gospel is not something that we believe in. We are called as Christians to share those things that we have been blessed with those who are less fortunate than us. We also have to always remember that we are called to serve God, and not prosperity, not pleasure, not property. Yes, they are an important part. They help us. They provide for us. The teaching of the church that we own buildings and schools, property, liturgical instruments, is so that we can give proper praise to God, so that we can provide those things which are necessary and good: education, training in faith. And yet, truly, these things are not the most important thing. It is faith and a life lived for God and God alone, and in love with Him. My brothers and sisters, let us take that to heart today and reevaluate our lives, keeping that in mind. And make sure that God and our love for Him is truly what we are serving and giving ourselves over to.